The drama surrounding Game 4 of the WNBA semifinals didn't just play out on the hardwood, it spilled into microphones, press conferences, and postgame interviews. What should have been remembered as Aaliyah Boston's defining masterpiece. A night of sheer dominance that lifted the Indiana Fever to the brink of history. Instead became shrouded in controversy when Aaliyah Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces turned their focus away from basketball and toward the referees. A special whistle, Wilson called it. As if the sound of the officials' calls had somehow betrayed the reigning champions. But peel back the emotion, the theatrics, and the frustration of a powerhouse franchise cornered in the postseason. And the truth is unavoidable. Indiana didn't win because of whistles. They won because of grit, execution, and an unstoppable centerpiece who imposed her will on both ends of the court. It all began with a simple, yet loaded comment. "I have a special whistle," Boston quipped, laughing in reference to her 13 trips to the free throw line. It was tongue-in-cheek, a playful jab at an opponent searching for excuses. Yet those words became the lightning rod for the Aces' unraveling narrative. Wilson and her coach, Becky Hammon, couldn't hide their frustration in front of the cameras. The box score showed the Fever with 34 free throw attempts to Las Vegas's 11. A gap so wide it looked like injustice to the defending champions. Hammon's post-game demeanor spoke volumes. She refused to dissect the game plan or her team's failures. Instead, she simply muttered, "They shot 34 free throws, and we shot 11. Next question. No strategic breakdown, no X's and O's, just exasperation. For a coach who has built her reputation on composure, it was a telling sign that the Aces weren't just beaten. They were rattled. But here's the truth hidden beneath the surface. Indiana didn't get to the line by accident. They didn't rely on phantom calls or some invisible favoritism. They earned every single whistle, the old-fashioned way, by relentlessly pounding the paint. Sealing defenders, forcing contact, and driving straight into the teeth of Las Vegas's defense. Aliyah Boston led the charge, posting 24 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists in a display that was equal parts finesse and ferocity. Her ability to catch the ball deep in the post meant Vegas defenders had only two choices: give up layups or foul. She turned her positioning into a weapon, and by the time the night ended, Wilson was the one fuming, not celebrating. The irony of Wilson's special whistle complaint is impossible to miss. Through the first 3 games of the series, the Aces were the ones thriving at the line, racking up soft calls and keeping their rhythm alive through free throws. Every bump on Wilson, every scrape on a drive seemed to send her to the stripe. Indiana, meanwhile, felt every bit of that whistle against them. Boston tagged for trying to establish post position. Kelsey Mitchell penalized for simply sliding in front of drivers. The Fever handcuffed at the worst moments. And yet, nobody from Indiana stood at a podium whining. They regrouped, adjusted, and kept fighting. So when Game 4 finally tilted in their favor, when the whistles evened out across the series as a whole, suddenly Las Vegas cried foul. The hypocrisy wasn't lost on anyone watching. And then came the moment that crystallized the comedy of the meltdown. With the game hanging in the balance, Becky Hammon called a timeout she didn't have. The mistake gifted Indiana a technical free throw, extending their lead in crunch time. It wasn't the referees sabotaging Las Vegas. It was their own sideline unraveling under pressure. Between the missed adjustments, the foul trouble, and the inability to match Indiana's energy, the Aces beat themselves as much as Boston and the Fever beat them. But if the Aces' frustrations turned into noise, Boston's play turned into music. This wasn't just a star making plays, it was a rising superstar shifting the power dynamic of an entire series. From the opening tip, Boston made a statement. She planted herself in the paint, absorbing every shove, every bump, every forearm Wilson tried to deliver. The duel that had been billed as MVP versus rookie phenom was no longer about reputation. It was about resilience, strength, and who could outlast the other in the trenches. Wilson's 31 points look impressive in a vacuum, but they came at a cost. Each bucket was a grind, every attempt a war against Boston's physicality. Where Wilson had once coasted into her sweet spots, Boston forced her further and further away from the rim. By the fourth quarter, Wilson looked worn, drained by the constant battle. Boston, on the other hand, only seemed to grow stronger. Her stat line painted the portrait of total control. 7 field goals, 13 free throws converted, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and a rhythm that dictated every Indiana possession. When the double teams came, she didn't panic. She pivoted, surveyed, and delivered the ball to shooters in stride. Her 5 assists were as devastating as her scoring, proof that her game had expanded beyond brute force into orchestration. This wasn't the rattled Boston of Game 3, rushed into turnovers and flustered by early traps. This was a player who had studied, adjusted, and returned with answers. That's what greats do in the postseason. They evolve. But basketball isn't won by one star alone. And Boston's dominance was amplified by the Fever's supporting cast. Kelsey Mitchell embraced the role of closer, delivering 25 points with the calm of a player who had seen heartbreak and wasn't about to let it repeat. Her step-backs over defenders, her fearless drives into contact, and her perfect poise at the line carried Indiana when Las Vegas threatened to surge. From the sidelines, Caitlin Clark could only shake her head in awe, summing it up with 2 words: Kelsey. Unreal. It was the performance of a player who understood the magnitude of the moment and refused to let it slip away. Then there was Lexi Hall, whose box score hardly told the story. Just 7 points on paper, but 38 minutes of tireless defense on Jackie Young. One of Vegas's most reliable weapons? With a back injury still nagging, Hall fought through pain to deliver for steals, a block, and relentless effort that drained Young's rhythm. Every possession Hall played was a masterclass in grit. When she left the floor, Vegas gained hope. When she returned, their momentum dried up. Odyssey Sims, too, redeemed herself from a nightmare outing in Game 3. With 18 points on 6 of -9 shooting, she turned slashing drives and mid-range jumpers into daggers that kept Vegas off balance. Her ability to pressure the rim forced Wilson and the Aces' defense to sag, giving Boston and Mitchell more space to operate. Shea Petty, the veteran, added steadiness in her 16 minutes, hitting timely shots and calming possessions just when Vegas threatened to strike back. These contributions didn't scream for headlines, but they made the difference between a squeaker and a statement by the time the final horn sounded. The Fever had done more than win. They had flipped the script of the series. The paint belonged to them. The boards belonged to them. The will of the game belonged to them. And the Aces, once untouchable, looked vulnerable, exposed by a team that believed and executed. Now, the stage shifts to the ultimate battleground, Game 5 in Las Vegas. Michelob Ultra Arena. A cauldron where the Aces thrive is where the Fever must prove this wasn't a fluke. Vegas, desperate and stung, will adjust. They'll watch the tape, study Boston's seals, chart Mitchell's shooting zones, and prepare counters. But Indiana has something Vegas can't replicate: belief forged in